Right then, here we are again. It's Wednesday, it's the 19th of June, it's 2024, and this is episode 11 of The Diary of a Nail Who Sticks Out. I am your host, Jack Christian, and I am the nail who sticks out. So, this episode was going along with my my usual cheery subject matter. I want to talk about. Basically, I've just been feeling a bit down on myself a little recently. I've been spending too much time scrolling through Instagram and watching people on there talk about how easy it is to like start a really successful business in 30 days and shit like that, and because I find it really fucking hard, as anyone who listens to this will know. It is not something that comes naturally to me, and it's not. I certainly I'm not in a position where I can just like jump on TikTok and be like, I'm going to start a business in 30 days and look at me do it. And then, so yeah, basically that makes me feel a bit shit about myself when I watch that, because I find it really hard. And I know it's a bit stupid. Like a lot of that content isn't really about like starting a business. It's about their businesses selling courses and shit like that. So like them making that content, and then at the end they're like, buy my course so you can understand how I do it. That's their business model. I don't know. And like I think it kind of like compounds the shit feeling I get, because then I tell myself that like, you're stupid for feeling down about this. And I think I am and I'm not, because excuse me, I think there is definitely an easier way to make a business successful than what I am doing. And I think for me, like the way I'm kind of approaching it is like, I do realize that, and I'm just trying to refine what I'm doing, change direction, and like actually figure out what the easy way to do it is. And I think I've used the analogy before. It's like I'm in a room with like 1,000 walls, and behind one wall is the secret door to the next room, and I'm just pushing against all the walls essentially, and eventually once I've pushed against enough walls, I'm going to find the door. So yeah, I mean, it's probably not the most efficient way to do it, but it's the way I am doing it. And yeah, so basically I don't find it very easy, like these people on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and whatever else. Anyway, so that's kind of like the reason I'm talking about this subject matter in this episode. I know a lot of these episodes do tend to have this kind of like negative thing about me, just kind of almost like a therapy session where I'm just kind of like going through what makes me feel shit, and then try and bring some positive out of it, which I guess is kind of a healthy thing. But I mean, maybe people don't want to listen to that. Who fucking knows? Anyway, on to this week's therapy session. So like going back to this idea of like these people on the internet that say starting a business is really easy. They're usually like in their early 20s, and it's really frustrating, because I'm in my late 20s and I've been doing this for 3 years, and I'm just surviving. I definitely don't feel like I'm thriving, and thriving is where I want to get to. So yeah, But then, so I will come across these people while I'm scrolling through Instagram Reels or whatever, which is something I definitely spend too much time doing, but that's not what I want to talk about. But then many of the people that I do actually like look up to, and I don't just flick through, but I actually follow their content. I read their books, listen to their podcasts. People like Seth Godin, Alex Hormozy, Christo, among others. They're just the ones that come to mind. Carl Martin, the guy's book I'm reading at the moment. These people, they talk about how it's really hard, especially when you're starting your first business. And it is hard, and it's a lot of hard work, and you really need to stick at it. And then when you figure it out, then it becomes easier. They say that your second business is much easier to make work than your first business, because in your first business you're just figuring it out. And I know I'm not an entrepreneur or anything like that. It's just a freelancing thing that I'm trying to get work in, but I'm trying to run it like a business. I want to be, rather than, maybe I'm kind of describing it wrong. Maybe it's not really freelancing. I want to be more like a one-man agency, but I call it being a freelancer. I don't know. Anyway, so I like to hear that other people find it hard, because obviously, before starting this podcast, I had, I don't know, how long has this been going now? Like 12 weeks. So, what's that, 3 months? So yeah, when I started this podcast, I'd already been in Australia for like 4 months. But I hadn't been actively pursuing new clients at that point. I was servicing a lot of old UK clients, which I still work with. And that's what's given me the income to survive whilst I'm out here. But yeah, so back when I was in the UK, I was freelancing full time for 2 years, and in that time, I had a few long kind of droughts where I didn't have much work, because all my work kind of came through my network of agency contacts, and the agencies weren't necessarily getting much work at the time, so I wasn't getting much work either. And in that time, it was really kind of nailed home to me that how little business knowledge, business acumen I have. And I felt really alone, because I would watch a lot of business content about how to make a business successful, and I get the kind of messaging from it is because essentially, if you're going to run a successful business, you need to know how to sell. And because of that, the tone of the content is very salesy, and they talk about a simple process, and then the implementation. At least, and for someone like me whose communication and social skills are still relatively new, still growing. Basically, I've just felt I felt a bit shit about myself. This is not easy for me. I have no real business trying to do what I'm doing, and I just felt completely alone. And trying to get this working is the hardest thing I've ever tried to do. So bringing that forward to now, the reason I started this podcast is, well, one of the reasons was to kind of turn that feeling, because I still have that feeling. I make progress, but then I look around at these people on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm just I'm so shit. Or what am I doing? These people find it so easy, yet here I am struggling. So yeah, that starting this podcast was kind of a way to turn that feeling into a bit of a strength, in that I can't be alone in the fact that in finding like freelancing and running a business hard. I can't be alone in that. And I wanted to create content so that there were people who felt like me, who that could then find my content, listen to my content, and not feel alone and feel like shit. They could see that I'm doing worse than them. No. So yeah, I mean, I've got a lot to learn about running a business and becoming successful in the one that I've chosen. And through this content that I create, I want to kind of like show people that, like, people in my position, that yeah, other people are finding it hard, you're not alone. B, kind of like, as I describe the journey that I'm going on, talk about like progress that I've made and mistakes that I've made, and kind of give people a kind of like ongoing documentation of my like kind of like process and progress, and so that they can learn from it, maybe even suggest ways for me to do it better. So that's kind of like the two-pronged reason for me making this podcast. I mean, like, because like back in the UK, one of my closest friends started a business of his own around the same time that I went full-time freelancing, and we would often talk to each other about like the ups and downs of what we were doing, which certainly on my side I found very useful, and I found it like really supportive. And I don't have that relationship with anyone over here in Australia yet, and I do occasionally talk to that friend like back and forth back in the UK, but I think we spoke to each other like 3 times since I've been here, because we're both very busy and we're both very shit at talking, doing the phone thing. So this podcast offers me a chance to kind of like say what I need to say, talk about the struggles I face, the battles I win, mistakes I make, and the progress I make. And it's kind of an outlet for me, and hopefully a kind of like, I hesitate to say beacon of hope, but that kind of like something for other people in my position to kind of like look at and be like, okay, there's someone else who struggles. And hopefully that audience can see me make gradual progress, and then at a point where I kind of like when I reach the point I want to get to, which I'll talk about in a bit, then they can see, then there's kind of like a documentation of that process, so, and that will always be there. So instead of me like working on this business, then becoming successful and being like, oh, this is how I did it, la di da di da, there's actually like a documentation of that process the whole way through. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I think I've talked a lot about becoming successful, and I guess success is different for different people. So I guess it's probably worth talking about, well, just briefly touching on what I mean by success from my perspective. So I'm not in this to become a millionaire. I'm not in this to make a shit ton of money. I think I'm very aware of the lifestyle that I like, and I don't need a huge amount of money to make that happen. So the success for me is essentially getting to a point where I have like an annual income that allows me to live the life I want and save a little bit for the future, and then but also kind of like level out the peaks and troughs of income, so I can kind of like have a steady cash flow through the year. That's what success is for me. I'm not going to put numbers on it or anything like that, because I still think in pounds, and I live somewhere where they use dollars, and I constantly have to use the currency converter on my phone. So I'm not going to put numbers on it because I just don't understand what the numbers are in different places. Anyway, I know this has just been another episode of kind of dour introspection. But I mean, it's just, the episodes are just what's been on my mind in the week before I record them. And I hope that kind of creates a more realistic documentation of the kind of the journey that I'm on, rather than the kind of perfectly edited, kind of manicured TikTok and Instagram and like YouTube business content that's out there. I want it to be a bit more real and a kind of behind the curtain of what I'm doing. So yeah, hopefully next week will be slightly more positive, and I will come back with some subject matter that really lights a fire and is slightly less depressing. Anyway, I hope you have a great week. This is the Diary of a Nail Who Sticks Out. I am Jack Christian. I'll see you next week.